Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. One time for the one time. Yes, man. Hit boy on the track. And yeah, man, we're back. So this is supposed to be a game. You saw earlier in the video, we played 57 games. So you'll see the Detroit Pistons game 58, game 59, and game 60 in this video, technically speaking, right? I don't know what happened to 56. I think 56 might have been that one game we showed you at the end of the All-Star break in the last video. I believe that was 55, so we might not have game 56. These things happen with me, right? I sometimes think I'm recording, I don't record it, or I'm not recording it. I apologize, please bear with me here, but I'll try to keep you as up to date as possible in my career as I can. Again, I've been way ahead in my in IRL, right? IRL, right? But it's neither here nor there, right? There are a couple comments that I mentioned, one of which I'll expound on slightly in the beginning of this video. The one I said about I don't believe in great players, I believe more so in great coaching. I'm not trying to say that because I feel like there's no such thing as great players. Obviously, there's a such thing as a generational talent. But even when you have a generational talent, a lot of times that talent isn't realized, that potential isn't realized until the right coaches or the right system in the front office and the people upstairs really make the decision to put you in a position to become or realize the potential rather of generational talent, right? Prime example, Patrick Mahomes, right? Wasn't he sitting on the bench, right? When Alex Smith was there and they finally decided to play him and, you know, all of that, the rest is history, right? Jordan didn't really win championships until they got Phil Jackson on board as coach because Jerry Krause, he had always kind of, I think he knew Phil Jackson well and didn't really like Doug Collins like that. Doug Collins was a former player. Doug was more of like a coach's coach. He was a player's coach because obviously Doug was a former player, but Doug had more of a my way or the highway system. He would eventually become more of a Jordan type coach, right? A guy who wanted to make sure Jordan did what he could do in order to win because he recognized Jordan's work ethic. But nonetheless, right, the facts of the matter still stand, right? Doug Collins, he was more of a fundamentally sound guy. He was open to the new style of play, spacing the floor out with the creation of three-point line. But Doug he came up in that traditional style of play. Phil Jackson is the Zen master, right? Phil was a player's coach, right? Phil was also a former player. And again, Phil was a player's coach. Phil, they call him the Zen master. We all know he used to smoke I think he still does, smoke the ganja, right? And, meditates and, again, was very lax and loose with his players, right? Obviously, Jordan being a generational talent, he could come back and get his job after retiring initially, right? Dennis Rodman could kind of do whatever he wanted, show up to practice if ever, show up to games 30 minutes right before, 20 minutes right before, dress, play, right? You knew the effort was going to be there. Phil Jackson was the kind of coach you needed for a group of guys like the Bulls in the 90s, right? Neither here nor there. The point I'm making is great coaching, or like, Bill Walsh, right? Taking Joe Montana and Steve Young, putting them in a system that was so good that either one of them could be a star quarterback in any sort of situation. Mind you, they're not the same player. Two different styles of quarterback, right? So, great coaching can really make a difference, especially at the professional level, because at the professional level, everybody's really good. At college, it's even more important, but the talent can easily make or break you at the collegiate level. It's not just the talent on your team, but the talent you play against, right? Whereas at the next level, the professional level, it's all about the coaching, right? It's one of the more important facets, right? And one thing I love about the way how coaching has changed to where the game has changed, right? The wing four, spacing the floor out, 4 out or 5 out. And also the mindset of let's put the star player either at the point guard position, right? Or if like for instance, like the Celtics with Jason Tatum being a wing 4 who can be a ball dominant guard, Jaylen Brown, a wing 3, or just a wing ball dominant guard, right? Either one of them could run the point, whether you put them at the position or you just run them at that position in the offense, right? Or how, again, mostly every point guard is the star player, right? The ability to dribble, drive, dish, right? As opposed to trying to ask like a Dwight Howard or a Wilt Chamberlain, even though Wilt was very capable of doing it. As opposed to asking basically a big man, unless he's like Jokic or something, to post up, give and go, collapse the paint on, you know, or like a Duncan. Because at some point, because like at the end of the day, let's face it, right? Duncan, all those guys I just mentioned, they're just generational talents. But with the right coaching staff, they were able to realize that potential, right? But when you talk about point guards who can pass and score as well as dribble, that becomes just a part of, well, in terms of maybe they didn't come in as a point guard. Maybe their prolific ability to score was just something that was used in a catch and shoot, dribble, drive, ISO situation as a two, but they showed the ability to pass or they worked on that aspect of their game. Now we're going to turn you into a point guard. So that's one of the great things about coaching, because those changes are made based off of coaching. And that's one of the big things that I mean. Basically, the coaching has streamlined the ascension and the realization of the potential of generational talents across the board, to where now it's much easier to identify a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, or to know when you slipped up and you didn't, you know, secure a Jalen Brunson, you know, when you should have, right? I mean, think about it, right? He was on the Dallas Mavericks to begin his career. If they give him the extension sooner, who knows? The Mavericks might have had just enough or just an extra added layer of depth and could have maybe taken the Celtics to 7 games if they might not have even won it, right? Neither here nor there. The point I'm making is that's a big, you know, big one. And another thing I want to talk about in this video, which is easy, it's kind of a good segue, that topic of great coaching, is the Josh Giddey situation being traded to the Bulls. And my thing is, you know, I get it, right? You had Shai Gilgeous-Alexander on the Thunder. He's a ball dominant guard who can pass. And Giddey is known to play point guard. With all that length and height, not really a great defensive player. You trade him for a great defensive standout. My thing is, and I mentioned in the last video, what I was talking about with coaching was in the video before last, but in the last video, I said that the Bulls have to, I know that they've done what every team has done, stockpile young talent and assets, but if you really look at their core, a lot of these guys aren't that young. LaVine is not young, right? He's like 29, right? DeRozan's not young. He's in his 30s. He's on the back 9 of his NBA career, right? Lonzo is like 26, so he's just now coming into his prime, but if he can get on the court, it'd be great. Kobe White, Ayo Dosunmu, still young, right? You know, at the end of the day, right, Vooch, Drummond, not really young particularly, right? The point I'm making is their core is a great core. Caruso wasn't really a young guy either. He's like the same age as LaVine. The point I'm making is they don't really have a young core, really, to speak. So it's good to trade for Josh Giddey, but Giddey just seems like yet another asset acquisition. As you see me max out my shooting badge, and I have maxed out all my badges to this point, right? I'm going to show you that in just a second, right? Yeah, I've maxed out all my badge, or I'm about to max out finishing. I'm like 1 away. I'm pretty much getting a finishing badge a game, right? At the clip that I'm dunking on a constant basis, right? So I'm going to be doing this drill, outlet passing, every practice. This is the drill I'll be doing every single practice, just to help me get those playmaking badges, right? So yeah, man. But back to what I was saying. When you talk about how the team, the Bulls have just, again, asset acquisition, it's been constant. They've done a good job, but in an endeavor to figure out which one is going to be the guy moving forward, I feel like a couple of these guys are not that far away from becoming Lonzo's age, or even better, when we think about 4 years ago when Zach LaVine was only 25, right? Asset acquisition is great until someone turns 26 like Lonzo. And then all of a sudden, oh, well, we haven't built the team around him. We were just so busy trying to acquire assets in an effort to see which one was the guy. And then we go and get yet another young, good player, yet another asset who has not realized his potential yet. And we're still kind of stuck. It's like it almost feels like we're going to go back. We're going to go into a rebuild phase, because instead of picking one of these assets to build our team around, we're now in the mindset that we just need to keep acquiring assets until one of them shows that they just give us this undeniable showing of talent. And it's like, yeah, that's all fine and good. But sometimes you do have to just draft a quarterback and build around him. And yes, give him a couple years, just like with like the Justin Fields situation, which I was very vocal on in my Madden franchise and a few videos. And I didn't really get too deep into it. We all know what happened. They drafted Caleb Williams. I get it. Justin was showing somewhat of a sign of not really being the guy. But one of the big things that the Bears didn't do is they didn't re-sign David Montgomery going into the last season. He was a good pass catching back. He wasn't as fast as Khalil Herbert. Khalil Herbert was kind of the same, just a little bit faster. So you would think, yeah, you know, it was a better move to just cut back in funds there, but then free up that money to pay who? Because you still had a decent amount of cap space that could have been realized. And obviously, well, this was a make it or break a year for Justin. If he played well, he would have gotten more of this money, but that's just the thing. You didn't put all his pieces. You kind of, they didn't go for broke, and they did not put a bunch of pieces around him to maximize his potential. I feel like if you have a great running back and don't rely on Justin to just run the ball and send everyone on streaks and think that that's going to help him be a great runner and pat, I feel like they, you know, if they would have just given him a full deck to work with, given him all his weapons plus the added wrinkle of DJ Moore, then you could have really decided to try and build a team around him before deciding to build a team around him or making him audition for the franchise role of building a team. At the very least, put a team around him. And they did a decent job. I think that one thing, that running back, right? And this is starting to feel like it's happening on the Bulls, right? Where they're waiting for someone to emerge instead of just being proactive and picking a guy and building a team around. I've kind of forced this is why you see me playing the way I play, because I'm forcing their hand. I'm obliging them. Build this team around me, because I'm going to be that guy. And I guess that's just what they need, right? That's what any pro team needs. A guy to just step up beyond a shadow of a doubt, like Jalen Brunson did on the Mavs, even though they had Luka, right? He was trying to show I can be that guy, right? How he's done for the Knicks, right? I can be that guy, right? Stepping up in a major way, but beyond just stepping up in a major way, the team, the front office, the organization, because think about it, Jalen Brunson's dad, Rick, former NBA player, assistant coach for the Knicks, right? So they've kind of made their minds up, right? I mean, Michael, he obliged the Bulls, right? But with that obligation being pressed, he put the screws to him by playing as well as he did. And mind you, this was big numbers back in the days when the Bulls weren't that good. It still left them with almost no choice of either choosing to build around this guy or completely go into rebuild mode. And sometimes you just don't want to set yourself back that far. So I think they should try to build around maybe Josh Giddey or Kobe White. Kobe White has proven to be a good player. He's kind of settled into somewhat of a role player kind of role on the Bulls. But don't wait too long. Otherwise, he'll end up a Zach LaVine. Or he'll, or either one of them, right? Giddey or Kobe White could end up being Alonzo Ball. Not that they'll be injured, but they're 26 years old and still haven't realized their potential as a high, lottery pick, or a guy who was, pegged to be someone you could build around. I feel like the Bulls need to just be proactive and pick a guy. I think they should pick White, but then they should pick Giddey because Giddey's younger. I don't know, but I think it's up to the Bulls. But anyways, I'm going to get up out of here, get at me, and function with your boy.